Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Jason.
Hello, everyone.
And Stoney.
Hello.
How's it going?
Yeah, it's going good.
Going well.
How's the weather? That usually seems to be a topic of conversation.
Well, especially it feels like because it's so turbulent. It's easy to.
This past weekend was just.
It got a little nipply.
That was the kind of cold that seeps into your bones.
Yeah.
And you just never can get warm.
There's a lot.
Once
there's a lot of humidity in the air, it works in both aspects. Either whenever it's hot, it feels like it's super hot, and then whenever it's cold, it feels like it's super cold.
Right.
And that's the thing. Is it like temperature wise, you're like, hey, it's pretty cold outside.
Right.
But the second like the
But it
humidity
was
raises,
something, yes.
you're like, man,
And the
it
wind.
feels
Yeah, that
different.
wind.
It
crazy.
feels different.
That wind was nuts.
Yeah. So.
Yeah,
And then of course I think it's forecasted to be like in the 70s and
well,
and
you know, I
whatever.
mean, it's supposed to actually get fairly mild by midweek, and then I think another little front's supposed to come through and kind of cool things off just a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking to my little brother the other day. He works for one of the TV stations in our local area.
Right.
And he said that they're feeling like they're in the middle of March. There's going to be one more good little dip down.
Gosh.
And I'm like, great. Blizzard number 2.
My sinuses can't handle it.
I know, right?
I'm going to tell you what, as much rain fell
yeah.
on us this past weekend, I can imagine if we would have had another scenario like we had in
gosh.
January.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how much snow that would have
Yeah.
equated to?
Yeah.
That would have been even more than we got the last time.
It rained like all day yesterday.
It did.
Just, like periodically.
And it was everywhere. So it was. Me and the girlfriend just pretty much stayed inside the house.
Oh,
and
yeah.
just chilled out.
Hey, that's the best way to handle it.
Yeah.
It
A
was
little
a-
chili, some
yeah.
split pea soup, or some
Yeah.
good,
Mhm.
savory, as Miranda
Yeah.
likes to savory.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
get in there.
Yeah, I was hoping that it cleared up. I unfortunately had to bring my car in because I was having air condition issues.
Oh, that's the worst kind.
Well,
And
you
of
don't
course-
need air conditioning
you
right
don't,
now.
you
Well,
don't, but it's
yeah.
coming.
Yeah, it's coming.
And-
Next
and-
week, probably.
You know, and so I think I've got a coolant leak somewhere. Matter of fact, today, before the show, that's what I was dealing with, was trying to figure out what possibly could be wrong.
Yeah.
Whether it was a compressor issue or the whole AC is like, because the car is got some age on it now. But it looks like it's just a coolant leak. So, they recharged it and it got cold. So I know the AC works, but I've got to bring the car in probably next week because, this week I'm heading out of town to go run my marathon. So when I get back, I will get it over there so they can possibly find out where the leak is. But, I was rather that than replacing the whole AC.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I was doing some research over the weekend. I try to still read, even though I can't really retain a lot of the stuff. And I hope I don't butcher this, but did you know that Achilles had a brother?
Okay.
Okay.
No, I did not.
And so basically, and I hope I don't butcher his name, it's Bophades, both of these. And it's just not in history. And I don't know why, because he was pretty spectacular, just like his brother. And Achilles' mom grabbed him by the ankle and dipped him into the river Styx. And he was fairly invincible in battle.
Except for the heel.
Yeah.
Except
right.
for the heel. Right, exactly. And so just like Achilles, his brother Bophades had a weak spot because his mother grabbed him by the groin and dropped him down into the river Styx. So everybody's pretty much heard of Achilles' heel, but you've never heard of Bophades' nuts.
I was trying.
Both of these nuts.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've heard of that before, and I was trying my best not to ruin that because that's funny.
Boy, the poor editing team's going to have fun with that one,
I'm
right?
telling you,
That'd
huh?
be great. Oh, man, that's funny.
Wow.
Sorry, I had to
Oh, no,
lighten
no,
it
no.
up. Man.
That's good.
Well,
yeah. What do we got? What do we got on the schedule for today? After
well, I mean, we're kind of following a theme here that we're since it's new and I think it's worthy to talk about. It's just the the new presidential administration that's come in, some of the radical changes that are happening.
Well, so we're going to do the first 30 days of the new presidency.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
And I have a point of order on that one. I think they completely missed the boat when they named DOGE. And that's Department of Governmental Efficiency.
Right.
And they screwed that up. Okay. They should have named it the Federal Agency of Financial Oversight, or FAFO for short.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Well,
FAFO.
Okay.
Fuck around, find out.
Well,
yeah, I can see that.
I thought.
Well, for a lot of federal employees, they're finding that out right now.
Because what did Elon Musk do? He says, we need a weekly report on what you did now.
You know why they did that? And everybody's getting all wrapped up about this. I think the point of that was just to see how many people actually monitor their emails.
Yeah. Right.
That was the whole point of that.
Yes.
Just to see how many people are actually checking emails.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Especially the ones working from home.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where, and look, these people have operated in a certain way, with certain liberties now, probably for a long time. You get comfortable. And all of a sudden you get challenged a little bit to kind of maybe rein that in and kind of get back to a more traditional type work environment that they all at one time did. And now they're pitching a fit. And I get it. I don't have very much sympathy. I mean, if you're receiving a paycheck, I think you should at least be checking your emails if it's coming from your work. Otherwise, then what's the point?
Well, part of the problem that's been going on with our tax dollars is there has been no accountability. Now there's some accountability. And then you saw that Kash Patel got named FBI director. And now there's going to be some. Did you find out who the assistant director is?
Yeah, I just saw that. Dan Bongino.
Dan Bongino is now. I thought they'd have tasked him with something in Secret Service because he was a longtime Secret Service agent. But can you imagine those two guys together?
Well, let me tell you, they're starting to move out a bunch of agents from what I've been reading.
Director Patel said he's pushing 1,500 agents out of Washington, D.C. and moving them into domestic
field offices.
To field offices.
Yeah, I saw that also, talking about maybe redirecting some of those IRS agents that were hired. That was 75,000 IRS agents.
There was 82,000.
And that they were going to move them into Homeland Security or
Border
Patrol.
Yeah.
Which to me, they're more needed there than at the IRS.
Donald Trump said 3 days into office, those 82,000 armed agents can either go home fired or go to work for the Border Patrol. I like that. Because you got to think about this. 82,000 IRS agents that are trained with weapons are not coming after the ultra elite. Who are they coming after?
They're coming after
my $602 in my bank account.
That's exactly what they go after. Because the reality is, they know people like you and I don't have really the means to fight.
That's right.
To make things difficult. When you're
but they'll pull James Brown out of his bed in his underwear at 4:30 in the morning to go put him in jail for a couple tax dollars.
Well,
that was a atrocity in this world to pull. It's James Brown.
Right.
Whatever. But really,
Speaking of taxes, one of the big things that have come out, a lot of people are talking about right now, is the possibility of replacing the income tax with tariffs.
Really?
Yes.
I haven't heard that. Wow.
Oh, yeah. They're just
this country was founded on tariffs.
And there's there's schools of thought on the pros and cons of tariffs. Yes, back in the early 1900s, the United States did operate upon tariffs. Now, my understanding, I'm not an economist, and nor do I pretend that I'm even remotely read up on all the economic theories on tariffs versus income tax, and there's a reason why we left tariffs and moved to an income tax system
to pay for the Civil War.
Well, that was after the Civil War.
That's what I'm saying. That's how up until the Civil War, it was all tariffs. Right. And after the Civil War, they said, we need to figure out how we're going to pay for this and supposedly reconstruct the South, which no money came down here. That was the first abuse of the liberal Democrats. Right. It never made it down here to reconstruct the South.
Well, it was
that was a voluntary thing.
Well, it was, but I mean, there was some, it did pass. Surprisingly, it passed in all the states to necessary to change the Constitution, because there is a constitutional amendment that created an income tax. Yeah. So there was obviously some support at that time to change the way we funded the government.
Yeah.
Now, as with anything, the more bigger your government gets, the more programs it starts to run. It needs more and more money. We think back when the founders founded in the United States, and they basically listed some very specific things that the federal government was supposed to do, and anything not listed there would be down to the states.
Yeah.
But we,
the
country has changed quite
even
since
in,
that
say,
time.
World War II and World War I. Mm-hmm. Okay, our taxpayer dollars didn't completely pay for that. If they wanted to pay for the war, what did they do?
They pretty much just issued bonds.
They sold bonds.
Yeah, war bonds.
That's how you paid for it. If you wanted to support it, you bought some bonds.
All right.
And it was pretty simple. So in his first month, we've got 73 executive orders.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I think he's done
which
the most.
Which I think, personally, I think it could be a good and it could be a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes I've learned this from my own job, is if you come in as a new person in leadership, and and there is like a certain way things are done, and you're supposed to come in there and change things up, or however like it's the structure is supposed to be. Sometimes it's best to get all your stuff in a row to begin with, especially when you only have limited time. It's best to go in there and make the changes that you want to kind of live into. So I see that as probably a good thing, but sometimes I think it also can be kind of not so good, because again, I think you're probably shaking up the
he's
mess.
not completely new.
This
is his second attempt at this.
Right.
So
but that's
now
what
he
I'm
knows.
talking about. I was like, for me personally, I've come into a work site before and been like, okay, I have previous knowledge of how this goes, and I know how I want this to be. And sometimes you have to like kind of shake up the nest. There's a lot of things, a lot of structure in place, and you got to go, it's my way or the highway. And sometimes
that's what he's doing,
like
basically.
Yeah.
So we've got 16 hostages released. Border encounters are down 93%.
It's amazing how that works. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Doge has saved so far $55 billion.
Billion.
There have been 8,768 ICE arrests, and just formal remarks and news conferences are 32. How about that? This man's busy and still can find time to play a little golf, from what I understand.
Yeah, I mean, look, some of the big news stories that we all saw that's come out during this 30 days. I mean, I think one of the biggies was the Trump administration has offered to buy out 2.3 million civil servants.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, including the entire workforce. The deferred resignation program affecting the civilian workers would allow federal employees to remain on the payroll through September 30, but without having to work in person and possibly having their duties reduced or eliminated in the meantime, according to an email sent to federal employees. Now, a U.S. judge on February 6th temporarily stopped that, but I think that judge basically then ruled, he can do that. And right now you're seeing a lot of this kind of judicial attempt to stop some of these executive-oriented...
But we also talked about that in a past episode, that these judges do not have the right to do that, because he is basically the CEO, the executive of the federal government, of how it's run.
Right. And that to me is, I'm very much I'm a bit frustrated about constantly having a judge, some judge somewhere in the United States do a stay. I have a problem with, be honest with you, with just one judge in some part of the United States that basically stops the whole operation. I just think there's something wrong with that. I think for something to affect the United States as a whole, it should be the Supreme Court. Period.
Right.
That's why you have a Supreme Court. Otherwise, and let me just go find some judge that's sympathetic to my cause.
Right.
And I won't just stop the whole operation. I don't think that's how this was meant to
it's
work.
Not very efficient. Yeah.
It's no. Well, I just don't believe that was how this was supposed to work. The entire population votes on one figure.
Right.
This is the president of the United States.
Right.
Democracy then works through him through his appointments.
Not democracy.
Well, constitutional republic.
Thank
but
you.
I'm talking
Just
about.
we gotta stop making that mistake. I'm not shooting a shot at you,
but
we got to quit calling it a democracy.
It's a democracy in the sense that we vote. That we vote on this one person to, in essence, be the executive of the United States.
Yeah.
It is the executive's responsibility through his appointments to carry out the supposed will of the people.
That's right.
So that's what I mean when I say democracy. You're, in essence, what's happening is these judges are circumventing, to me, that intent of how this relationship was supposed to work.
Right.
So I think there's problems there, but right now, I mean, it's still ongoing.
They're uncovering a lot. Doge, part of their USAID audit, uncovered $2 billion was handed over to the Clinton Foundation and was never accounted for. The foundation has never had to account for its grants before and acted like they were completely exempt from the law. And so they did it out in the open because nobody ever took a look at it. Well, guess what? Hello. They're looking at it now.
Oh yeah, Doge is when you talk about that's a firestorm right now in some political circles, and they haven't even gotten to some of the more.
Right.
I mean, I can only imagine what they're going to find.
They're only
well. How about they
Medicare.
said their next target is the Pentagon?
Yeah, I mean, between Medicaid, Medicare, and the DoD, I can't.
I feel like
imagine
they're only just like pruning the outside of the shrub.
Well,
right now.
I mean,
They're
let's
not
be
getting
honest.
down to,
I mean, let's be honest. Only about 30% of the U.S. budget really can be affected without too much political fallout.
Of course.
Okay. The reality is you start getting into Medicare.
Oh yeah.
And what's going on there?
Oh yeah.
What 53 billion or whatever, Stoney just that would be just nothing.
A drop in the bucket.
A drop in the bucket of what's being probably wasted in that. I mean, just look what they found with Social Security. 130-year-old people supposedly are getting checked.
There was somebody that was 250 years old.
Get out.
Yes, that's older than the country.
Somebody's cashing these checks.
Yeah.
So the question is who? Now, some people say that is people that have stolen Social Security numbers, which is a huge problem.
Or is that how they're doing it? They're doing that with the illegal immigrants.
Exactly.
Is what they're feeling is that they're giving them these stupid numbers that somebody's already died.
Right.
And no accounting for it. Bam.
Right.
That's how they're doing
it. To me, a number should be like, once a death certificate is filed, you link that to the Social Security number, then that Social Security number is inactive.
Well, it's got to be inactive for 50 years because we're eventually going to run out of numbers.
Well, that's true.
Well,
did you also see that the very liberal Ninth Circuit Court made a ruling? Now, this isn't in this first 30 days, but it's close enough.
Yeah.
That the 84 of Biden's last-minute pardons are unconstitutional.
Really?
And Judge Joe Barron wrote in his opinion, there is no precedent for pardoning someone who has not been charged with a crime. President Biden's preemptive pardons are therefore outside the constraints of constitutional law. The Solicitor General is expected to turn these cases over to the Department of Justice for prosecution.
Wow. Very good.
And who's over the Department of Justice now?
Pam Bondi.
Thank you.
So
she's something.
She's a shark now.
So does that I know that includes a lot of people, but I know his son was one of them, right?
His son's
but
one
I think,
of them.
but he had actual.
Shift. What's the Warren?
Adam Schiff and you got Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of shenanigans supposedly with that other federal entity that was created after the financial crisis in 2008. I think it was the Consumer Protection Bureau, which Elizabeth Warren was very much tied into. And there's a bunch of shenanigans going on with that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that it's amazing how fast things have been moving.
Oh, and that's like I said, I think that's a good
I
thing.
mean, it's incredible. Every day it's something new, and I'm gonna tell you, they're gonna uncover stuff that people are gonna are gonna make people just flat out angry, like they're not already.
Well, this
angry.
is what I'm gonna throw one at you. It makes me. Rutgers has a $9.2 million contract with the Defense Department for large-scale social deception and active social engineering.
Wow.
Think about that one for a minute. Like when we were talking with, when they were doing that horse hockey with, what do they call it? They don't call it Facebook now. What is it? Meta or whatever it is. And X or Twitter and
TikTok, all that stuff. Yeah.
What are they doing? What are they doing? You got almost $10 million you're spending with Rutgers just to actively screw with the American public.
I really think that the country, I think this previous election has shown me that there is a majority of people that I think want things to change, and I think they want to live a better, more comfortable life, and they're tired of things the way they were. And I think now that he is in office and he has the ability to start making changes, and I think he has the majority of people behind him, I think that is kind of allowing him to just kind of take this first few months to just like clean shop. And I think personally that he is trying to live into the next 4 years. I think he's cutting all this BS out now, so that way that in the next 3 years or so he can, really do some real work in the future. That's what I think, at least.
Well, I think we're 37 trillion in debt.
Yeah.
I think there has to eventually be a reckoning of really what the United States can do.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're starting to see that in Western Europe right now. You're starting to see some traditional post-World War II allies that are, have gotten comfortable with basically the United States being basically for pretty much everything.
We need to get out of that habit.
And I'm not saying abandon our allies. I don't necessarily believe in that. But I do believe it's like a petulant child.
Right.
You got to start pulling back a little bit and say, okay, at the end of World War II, I get it. We had to rebuild you. We had to get you back up and go.
We didn't have to do that, though.
But we chose to do it.
Right.
We didn't have to.
Because it benefited America for trying to rebuild Europe. And it was very beneficial for us. Enough time now has passed where those countries can stand on their own feet and provide for their own defense.
But they've never paid any of it back. And so Donald Trump telling Zelensky in the Ukraine, you're going to give us half of your natural resources, your precious metals.
I thought it basically said take access to all of your precious.
No, he said half, but access to all of it, but half of it as payment back. He's just holding them accountable.
Right.
He's just holding them accountable.
Wait a minute, what do we get out of this deal?
We get the precious metals.
Exactly. So
and there's nothing wrong with that. Hey, since you ain't going to have the money to pay it back, start shipping your stuff over here so we can start using it. Now, I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that's a smart business decision for America.
That's the same thing, I think, why they mentioned Greenland. Yeah. I think there's a ton of resources there.
Oh, yeah.
That I think would be very beneficial. I think Trump is consolidating the hemisphere.
He's looking at it as a business, in a smart business, long term. Yes,
and that's what I'm saying. You got to start cutting away stuff now and making things streamlined and get all this noise out the way now, so that way you can make cleaner decisions.
I think look. I've said all along, and I don't say this lightly.
Yeah.
and it's not to be fear mongering or anything like that, but I do feel ultimately that I feel like a conflict with China is coming.
Yeah.
And I think there are some people looking at this going, we need to start redirecting resources to be able to check China.
Yeah.
Russia is not the threat,
Right.
per se, anymore. I think to a degree they are. And I don't think they will always. I think there was a chance after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union that maybe a foreign policy would have worked a little differently, and we would have brought Russia in as more of an ally.
Well, they wanted to join NATO,
and we could have at that time cultivated those relationships, maybe changed that kind of government they have, maybe introduce more of a hybrid model over there where you can introduce some capitalism.
Yeah.
And then we could have definitely had now a bulwark against China.
Yeah.
And I think that was a mistake.
Well, I think had they seen what China was going to turn into, they might have would have made that decision.
Unfortunately, blame Richard Nixon for opening that market. And unfortunately, when he did that, all those companies saw a lot of cheap labor. And that's basically when it started. The seeds were planted at that point that manufacturing was going to start shifting out of this country, which I think hurt us.
Oh, absolutely.
I think when you become a nation of buyers instead of a nation of producers, if that ratio is too skewed one way or the other, I think you run into problems. I believe that, look, now the reality is there are parts of the world that people are going to work for a whole lot cheaper than what an American is going to be willing to work for. I've always said we're a victim, if you want to call it that, but we're a victim of our own success.
Right.
We are.
Right.
We're used to a certain standard of living. I expect a certain amount of money. I expect to have certain things, whereas maybe in another country, and considering I just got back from a cruise and I have seen poverty and how probably 2 billion of the planet's population lives. Yeah. I could see how they would be willing to work for pennies. Yeah. Because
that's a lot to them.
That's a lot to them. Yeah. And so,
or even just like a place to stay.
It's a difficult situation in where we're at. And I hearken back to an episode some time back we discussed about unlimited energy. Yeah. And I said then that would be the game changer. If energy could go, if we could develop 0-point energy, market that on a mass scale where everybody had free energy or energy very, very, very cheap. Yeah. That then all of a sudden changes the paradigm. But until we get to such a point, we have what we have.
I just want to throw this out here as a little bit of a teaser. One idea for an episode I was thinking about that may be coming up in the future if we all agree on it is quantum computing. It is something that has been talked about a lot in
that would be fun.
That
they've been talking about. I've been
not only have they been talking about it,
that.
but they have a chip now that I forgot. I think it's Microsoft or somebody.
I think they had to shut it down because it was.
Not from what I've been reading, but like the one that they do have, it's supposed to be really, really good. You want to talk about changing the game as far as like technology, information, like it's crazy.
You can do hundreds of years of work in a span of,
So it's crazy. Like I said, I've been looking into it. I kind of am interested in it, and I may want to talk about it some more. But you talk about energy and just the rapid expansion of what could change the game.
Right. I think and it's going to be a balancing act with this because the reality is tariffs and I do believe Trump uses tariffs to start a conversation for more so than just the idea of imposing a tariff. I know people are complaining about Canada being imposed out of tariff, but I think Trump is wanting them to do a little bit more on their border, of stopping some of the stuff that's coming in. Because
considering we give them $80 billion a year just to stay afloat, how about we don't say we're not going to tariff you? How about we just quit giving you money?
Right.
Either do it or we're just going to keep our $80 billion a year.
Exactly. But see, this unfortunate. A lot of these countries, and Canada's one. That's the reason they're able to have been able to give a lot of these socialized medicine. We've
all
heard
the American dollars.
It's all because of American dollars, and because they don't have to spend that money on defense.
Right.
They can invest that money in their national health system. So I mean, if it's not fair. And as I said, these relationships should only be in place if it benefits the mother country. As soon as it ceases becoming a viable system for us, then, okay, we need to renegotiate this because, look, times change.
Right.
Circumstances change. We're not in the same boat that we were in right after World War II.
Yeah.
Where we're the only manufacturing country left pretty much on the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, so we have to look at these things and kind of sift through all the BS. The people that are raising 10 kinds of hell right now about this, and we're destroying the world and everything else. I'm going to tell you another interesting story, which is going to come out of all this declassification of stuff. I was reading something the other day because being a Catholic, I'm very interested in what's going on in Rome.
Right.
Did the U.S. government force the previous pope to resign and implement the new one? I was reading something on that.
Really?
Was there a CIA-backed attempt to force Pope Benedict to resign and then put Francis in its place?
Really?
Because they were totally two different popes.
Yeah. Very.
Totally different.
I'm not even in that world.
Pope Francis is a Jesuit. Benedict was not.
According to the prophecy of the popes, he was going to be the pope anyway. I don't necessarily know that there was any definitive proof that happened, but since the first pope, his name has been on the wall and his picture and his name, so they knew hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago that he was going to be there. He's the last pope.
Well,
according to the prophet, I ask you to look into that one. Look at the prophecy of the popes.
I think that was the Malachi. I believe is probably what that.
It's called the prophecy of the popes. Look it up. You'll find it. If you're into this right now, you'll love it.
I'll look. The reason I brought that up is because of all these declassification of files that are going on with JFK, with Martin Luther King.
Right.
I think you're going to be finding a lot of what happened with the January 6th stuff that was buried. I think, and the Nancy Pelosi's involvement, the whole National Guard thing about how all that was maybe that wasn't all how it was pictured. So I just thought that was interesting that I saw an article on this is did the CIA force Benedict to resign?
Yeah.
And right now, based on what I've seen that what the CIA has now got their hands in, it wouldn't surprise me if there's some truth to that, because I do believe that this idea of promoting all this immigration coming out of the third world, all these Muslims that have been imported out of these Islamic countries into Western Europe, and it's completely destroying the culture of those. I mean, London is not the same anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear stories of people that are just absolutely it's like, what's happened? Sweden. We talked about the Swedes all the time about what's happening over there with these Islamic groups that are raping these women up there, and it's just because it's just terrible. I'm kind of wondering because a lot of these European countries started doing this when it was after Benedict died and Francis got installed. That the idea of you should be taking immigrants. That's where all this started going. It really did. So I just kind of find it interesting that, now that you've seen all these documents getting declassified, I'm wondering if there's this broader thing going on here. What the end result is, I don't know. Why would you want to destroy civilization?
One world government.
Well, I mean, it could be. Yeah, it could be a one world government. I'm not opposed to that idea.
Opposed to the idea or opposed to the one world government?
To the idea of the one world government, as far as what you're saying, your reasoning. That's what I can go there because there's plausibility there.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I still, how'd you bring about the one world government?
Well, you have an evil to fight.
You
created the evil. Now you got to fight it. Did y'all see last week where they found that the Doge team discovered that FEMA spent $59 million in a week to house in luxury hotels in New York City illegal immigrants. But a couple of weeks before, they were forcibly removing North Carolina citizens in freezing temperature out of their hotels.
Wow.
To put in illegals.
No, just because your money's up, your time's up, get out. We're not paying for it anymore.
Yeah, but we'll pay for the illegal immigrants. I mean, I don't understand that. To me, that's just evil. We've kind of lost our way, and
it's backwards. It's backwards.
It is the idea that we can't even take care of our own citizens. How did we get so far off the track that we're more concerned about importing all these illegals and we are caring about our own citizens that are born and raised here and have been here for generations?
Here it is. Look at Gavin Newsom. He spent $9.5 billion on illegals' health care insurance in 2024. The fires were raging through California. They passed a bill to provide $40 million to pay for the legal fees for illegals to stop deportation. The fire damage, obviously, we know because he wanted to save a goldfish. Because he has provided $4 billion to provide a high-speed rail line, which was mismanaged and currently sits unfinished, and $24 billion in homeless funds is unaccounted for. California is in debt to the tune of $158 billion, and now he just asked the government for $40 billion to assist him in fire restoration.
Gosh.
Well, I mean,
I'm not sure he's the right management for that.
Well, I mean, the fact is, unfortunately, that state has become so goofy in its politics that I've heard rumors that Kamala Harris might run for governor, and she might get.
Really?
She'll probably get elected. She'll probably get elected over there. I mean, that's because that's who these people. I mean, they're so warped they've been so warped under this idea of white guilt and we gotta you have to think a certain way, and it's just the idea of actually electing somebody that's got a noggin and knows what they're doing. I guess you can't do that anymore. It's all about, I got to think a certain way, and if you think a certain way, then you check the box, and then okay, then we'll vote for you. But beyond that, that's it. There's a lot of stuff with the military right now. I saw 1,500 troops sent down to the border. I see the Mexican government has sent a number of National Guard up to their border. Hopefully they'll be stopping these caravans coming out of Guatemala.
Oh, it's down 93% so far.
That is an outrageous percentage. I can understand, like I feel like if you're gonna do, I was expecting it to be like a more, I don't know, like a more reasonable percentage, I guess. And then like to hear 90 something, that's wild.
I mean, you saw though right now this fight with, of course, Trump renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and then the Mexican president, she has sued, and then she's made comments that she is going to fight any incursion into Mexican sovereignty as far as targeting the cartels. And which indicates to me that she's in the presidential spot because she backs the cartels, and the cartels are protecting her. Because most presidents that are anti-cartel end up dead or their heads cut off somewhere.
Right.
I think Trump designating the cartels as terrorist organizations is huge, because I'm gonna tell you, you start bringing these U.S. Tier 1 units online, the cartel's days would be numbered quite quickly. They would be wiped out if not altogether, their strength would be reduced considerably.
Right.
And I think to me, she's in a really tough spot with that right now because, wait a minute, you're fighting us taking out drug cartels. What's going on with you here?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that exposes her. And I don't know her personally. You never know. Maybe deep down she can't stand the cartels, but she can't say that.
Right.
Right.
And she can't do anything about that for fear of herself and her family. So, I mean, that's just how this works. But, something that just made the latest news. The Trump fired all the Joint Chiefs of Staff, got rid of them.
Yeah. Did you see the story at who he put as the chief?
Mm-mm. Okay. No, I haven't.
The 3-star general.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's the guy who was honest with him.
Yeah.
He said, if you let us do it this way, I could have it finished in a week. And he says, well, why didn't your superiors tell me that? Did you tell it to them? That's not our right. That's not our position to tell them what to do. And I love that's a great story. He tells it, what is it, CPAC or something, about this general saying, oh, if you let us do this, this, and this, we could have it over in a year. Well, they told me 2 years. Military industrial complex is telling you
well,
that.
I think what happened was Trump, and you saw that story that came out that there was a secret meeting at the Pentagon about, in essence, ways to undermine Trump. And to me, if you got military generals that are basically doing their best to undermine the president of the United States, who was elected by the majority of the voters,
large majority,
and you're trying to protect. What are you trying to protect?
Yeah,
and
we're trying to hide.
What are you trying to do here? So I think basically he said, you know what, y'all all gone.
Yeah.
Every one of y'all are gone. Thank you for your service, but don't let the door hit you in the butt.
He said all the generals that were in charge of the Afghanistan withdrawal, you're done. The day I get into office, you're out of here. I'm waiting to see how fast those guys go.
So, it's there's a lot of, I just really wish, I just want to get the military to the way what the military is meant to be. It is not a social experiment. It is meant to be the bludgeoning instrument of this country if it needs to go to war.
Yeah.
That is what the military is for. Unfortunately, it's turned into a social playground for social experiments. And I know some of the big things he did. He basically removed all DEI directives. He reinstated thousands of troops that were kicked out. Remember that story?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I think, Stoney, you talked about that a couple episodes back, which is huge, which those guys deserve, guys and gals deserve that resigned because their conscience says, oh, look, I'm not going to take the COVID shot.
Or forced to, not just resigned, were kicked out.
They were kicked out. And and then the whole this gender identity thing.
Did you see the clip recently that's kind of gone around of I think it's either Maine governor or one of the governors. He was talking about, he's like a press conference or whatever, and he's talking about trans in sports and things like that. And he calls her out directly.
She wanted to put her gravestone right there.
She was like, he was like, are you not going to comply to this? And she was like, no. And he's like, okay, I'll see you or she said, I'll see you in court. And he said,
looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it.
Let's do it.
He's like, I'm almost certain you won't have a space in the political sphere anymore. And I was like, God. But that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I think that is what I think so far a majority of the American people have wanted. And now that I think the opportunity is here, I think he has taken every opportunity to do that because he has the country. I think he has a majority of the country behind him. So I think now's the time to kind of do those kind of.
I'm gonna tell you the whole gender, men and women sports and all that is such a lopsided public opinion. Yeah. I mean, you saw the little spat that they showed between him and the governor of Maine.
That's what I was talking about. Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
That's the one.
That's what I was saying. The one where she was like, "I'll see you in court," and he was like, "Oh, I'm happy to."
Happy to. I think you're gonna lose that one.
Oh yeah, I was like, dude. That's what I'm talking about. It's like that. I think
that's the FAFO.
Yeah.
That just
Yeah.
Fart around and find out.
Yeah, and whenever I used to work for coffee shops, we had a phrase called FIFO, and it was first in, first out. And so, like, whenever you initially said it earlier in this episode, I was like, "What are you talking about?" But I guess it also could, apply to that as well. So, but anyways,
yeah, we are definitely.
Are there? Now I know that we've talked about some good and some kind of controversial things. Are there some like bad things that have happened so far?
Did you see on February 7th, a federal whistleblower filed a criminal complaint alleging that Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's involvement in the assassination attempt over President Donald Trump.
Really?
Yes, and it alleges that Christopher Wray conspired with the Biden administration to hide the reports.
Get out.
It's coming out.
Nah, dude.
It's coming out.
That's scary.
That's why I'm loving, Patel and Bongino in the Justice Department and our new Attorney General, because have you seen her talk?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
she's a pit bull.
She's a pit bull.
Loving this. She's like, come on.
I'm glad.
Yes.
I'm glad that we're starting to see.
I think it's a breath of fresh air.
And we had, what was the press secretary lady?
I can't remember her name.
The dummy, I can't remember her name. This girl that's on there is sharp.
Yeah.
She ain't playing.
Killing it.
Well,
I can't remember her name, and ma'am, if you actually listen to the show, I'm sure you don't. I'm sorry I can't remember your name. If you listen to past episodes, I got brain damage.
Yeah.
But she's something. Yeah. She don't take nothing.
No, I'm gonna tell you, she's got a strong. I mean, you look at the people now that are in the cabinet.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The issues of his background and vaccines and the whole medical, the health, the food and the drug and the pharmaceutical industry is just like the military-industrial complex, just
absolutely.
on their side. It's the same thing.
Caroline Leavitt. I'm sorry, Caroline Levitt. I had to look it up.
Yeah. It's just there are major issues that and things are so ingrained. Like the big thing was the USAID.
Mm-hmm. That was the start. That was the start.
From unfortunately, a program that probably started off with well intentions,
right,
gets hijacked. And what happens is these bad actors get involved in this group and this money, and then start redirecting to things that have absolutely nothing to do with aid or what the intent of what that program was. And what disappointing is I saw that the U.S. Council of Catholic Bishops is suing, which pisses me off because the idea that I've had conversations with me and my Catholic friends regarding Catholic charities and stuff like that, and as much good as they do, the problem is they got in bed with the government.
Right.
And the problem is when you get in bed with the government, you are going to be hamstrung of what you're actually there to try to teach. Yes. And that's the problem. That's why the abortion issues, you never hear anybody talk about it. It's because they're getting a check from the U.S. government
that
to
bishop,
do all it.
Marion Bundy, who tried to call President Trump out.
She was a Lutheran...
Episcopalian,
because she was a female.
She was receiving $53 million in government programs
from
immigrant resettlement.
Yep, USA. That's exact. Or money redirected from FEMA.
Yes, something. But I mean, so what is your real message here? Oh, you're not going to get your money no more?
That's unfortunately, it's, I hate to say it, follow the money.
We've said that many times.
Follow the money, and it just disappoints me. And I know Vice President Vance, who's also a Catholic, also was expressed dismay that they're actually suing, and it's a shame that they're doing that. But unfortunately, they put themselves now in this trick bag where they've gotten used to this money. And I tell people all the time, charity should not be forced. That's not how the earliest Christians operated. If you really want to go to that model, then you need to go back and look at what they did. Was Christians pooled their resources together, and then from there they took care of the orphans and the widows and stuff like that. There was no government programs to do this.
Right.
And unfortunately,
well, that's what tithing was in the early biblical days. Tithing wasn't, I'm going to give you 10% of my salary. Because most people really didn't make a salary.
Right.
But what was the point of the tithe? Okay, you knew there was going to be a famine. You knew there was going to be this. You knew this. So what? Oh, I'm a farmer. I'm going to give the best 10% of my corn.
Right.
I'm a fisherman. I'm going to give this.
Because God, back to God, because God enabled me to do that.
He's going to use that to take care of the population during the famine. And you were prepared to take care of the people and help. Man turned it into, well, you need to give me 10% of your salary because you ain't a farmer. You just make money now.
Well, what happens is now you have your tax dollars that are now going to things that really are beyond the scope of really where I expect my tax dollars to go. I want my tax dollars to take care of people that are here.
Same thing in the church. Where are my tax dollars going? They're being mismanaged to a $40 million mansion and 14 cars for the pastor. That's not it.
Yeah, I mean, that to me is, you got a problem. And that's what I'm saying. I have been critical of that as much good as Catholic Charities has done.
But you see, that's
you got in bed with the government.
And see, I want to go there. I want to go right there with you. I've said this, and I've said this time and time again. This is an attack on the American family, because who truly is the most generous group of people?
The
American family.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to hurt that. They want to destroy that. They want to make it to where we don't have any money to go help nobody out. And that's why there is such another reason why there is an attack on the American family, is because we are the most kind, generous people on this planet.
We are. The American people, I think, has proven time again. We can go look no further than what we talked about earlier. Let's look at the Marshall Plan. We rebuilt Europe.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't.
We shouldn't have.
I think it was because that was a bulwark, because they knew what the Soviet Union was going to be doing, and I think there was a reason why. I would rather build them up and let them become our allies, and now we have because the communists would have taken over all of Europe. Mm-hmm. If we wouldn't have done anything, I'm a firm believer the Soviets were going to move in, because they were already moving in.
Sure.
I mean, the stories of General Patton. He hated the communists. Mm-hmm. He did. Matter of fact, he got criticized because he was using former Nazi soldiers and for recruiting them to the American forces to fight the Russians. Mm-hmm. And which he got him into a lot of trouble,
right?
Because supposedly the Soviet Union was our ally, but in reality, they never were really our ally. They were looking out for their own. If Hitler would have never invaded Russia, I'd be very curious how World War II would have turned out.
Well, that was more the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Exactly.
That's all that was.
Yep. So,
and you know what? Had Hitler never attacked Russia, none of that would have happened.
That's right.
None of that would have happened. Had Hitler stayed out of Russia for that little oil in that little strait thing down there, none of this would have happened. The world would, had he just stayed on his track, that would never have happened. There's no telling that might be a good episode right there if we can find a good historian or something that want to come on and talk about that.
Kind of a what if.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What if Hitler would have never invaded Russia? Well, I mean, probably for all intents and purposes, now whether he would have, I mean, we're kind of getting off topic, but I mean, if he would have not had to contend with the Eastern Front and could have used and thrown all German forces to the west, it might have been the world would have turned out a whole lot different. I'm not saying that ultimately we would have, if we still would have ended up winning that war.
Yeah.
But
Or would we have?
yeah, exactly, because I don't see
All he needed was 4 to 6 more months for an atomic bomb of his own.
Right.
The jets were starting to make production. He had 2 or 3 tanks that were untouchable that were getting ready to come out. All he needed effectively was, say, 6 months to a year.
Yep.
If he could have lasted another 6 months to a year, what would have happened? There's no telling.
He probably would have taken it. He would have probably taken Britain. And then now we don't have a beachfront to launch a Normandy invasion anymore. He fortifies pretty much Europe, and it's all basically it's all fascist at that time. And of course, America would have had to deal with the new power, just the way it would work. But what happened is what happened, and we rebuilt Europe, and that enabled us to at least save Germany as much as
for the second time.
That country is
and France. You don't want to talk about people that owe us some money. France still has never paid us back.
Well, I think unfortunately what's happened is this is what happens is long time ago. We should have been pulling the dollars away little by little to let them get used to being able to put more of their money. I mean, it's a shame that I was reading an article that Britain can't even field an army. I mean, that's how bad they are right now. It is that country has completely fallen apart. They can't even field an army. I mean, Germany is the second biggest arms importer to Ukraine outside of us.
Right.
So I don't even know where Britain is right now. Britain is just completely have allowed themselves to be overrun with the third world.
Right.
And they're all Islamic people they've allowed in. And I don't understand. I don't understand why would you want to destroy your culture with that.
Right.
I don't get that. And then of course I saw that 40 in the Congo. I don't know if y'all saw that article.
Yeah.
40 Christians had their heads behind.
I thought it was 70.
It may have been more. I think I saw 40, but it could have been more. Had their heads beheaded because they were by Islamic fundamentalists.
Yes. Really?
And, unfortunately, I made a comment, and I think it got removed. But I said we're at war with Islam. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we are. I know that might offend people. And I don't mean to offend people, but I think for many of these people, and they're thinking that the Crusades never stopped. The West has moved on.
Yeah.
But in their minds, it hasn't.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they're still running around doing this. You got certain elements within that religious belief system that just seem to, it's like, man, you need to get on with your life and actually learn to build a house. Mm-hmm. Build an actual city. A functioning government and where people are taken care of. I mean,
I'm being choice and not saying what I want to say, but because there's some things I want to say, but you're right.
Yeah,
I agree.
I just and look, any Muslims that are listening, and I have nothing personally against that, but you just don't see Christians running around chopping the heads off people. Right. You do not see that.
Yep.
Matter of fact, you don't see Hindus people doing that. I knew there's some violence between the Hindus and Muslims.
Right.
I do know that. But you don't see Buddhists do that. Yeah. There's something going on there, and I don't know what the fix is, but we're in a very interesting times. The more I hear about what's going on in the world right now, because now guess what I'm seeing? You're starting to see elements in India. They've got now a movement of make India great again. Mm-hmm. So this whole Trump movement is inspiring some other things in other countries to, maybe we need to start asserting a little bit more independence, and I don't want to lose our allies, and I think there's somewhat of a delicate balance you have to strike. But I do believe that in many ways, some of their populations are acting like little children. That we may have to spend more of our budget on this, and that may mean a little less of this that they're used to getting.
Right.
And I think that's where the problems coming in right now. And they got to get their act together. They got to get their countries back. They got to get their cultures back.
Right.
And
we talked about that on this show. Is it now instead of us worrying about everybody else, we're trying to focus on ourselves and get ourselves back.
And everybody's getting butthurt right now because
we have to fix ourselves. We talked about remember the bridge collapse episode and how much of our infrastructure that is just.
They say 75% of our bridges in America should be condemned.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. We can't even take care of our own country, and we're spending billions of dollars in these other countries.
How many of that $80 billion we send to Canada every year? How many bridges would that fix? And how many people would that put to work?
I hope that
then the trickle down effect is now people got more money. Now they can spend more money. Now companies make more money.
And in the next few years, I hope that we can see some restructuring of things, and I just hope that we can stay on a good path. Even though I know that the pendulum swings back and forth forever, is what it feels like.
Well, the good thing about it is the pendulum swung so far.
Oh yeah,
it was terrible. The pendulum has only yet started, so maybe we got a little bit more time for that pendulum to swing.
Yeah. But with that all being said, please, if you can, reach out to us and let us know what you think about all this stuff. We talked about a lot of great stuff.
And share us with your friends.
Yeah.
Man, pick 3 or 4 people and just send them a link to the show and tell them, if you like us, tell them if you hate us.
Yeah.
Just get people listening and let's have a conversation.
We have a little dot card link that I put at the bottom of every podcast episode. I believe it's dot.cards/retrospect pod. It has all of our links there, so that's a great thing that you can send to somebody. There's also a little QR code associated with it, and they can find all the places that they want to listen to us or get involved. We have all the different places where you can leave a comment and let us know what you think about what's going on recently. But until next week, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with us today. You're the best. Peace.